The flickering fluorescent light cast an eerie glow over the empty lab at 2 a.m. I should have been the only one there, but when I heard footsteps echoing down the hallway, I knew my quiet night of research was about to take an unsettling turn. I'd been burning the midnight oil for weeks, poring over data and running simulations for my thesis. The lab had become a second home, its familiar hum of equipment and faint chemical smell oddly comforting tonight, though that comfort vanished. The moment I realized I wasn't alone, the footsteps grew louder, more deliberate. I held my breath, eyes fixed on the door. It swung open, revealing a figure I recognized, but didn't expect. Dr. Reeves, my thesis advisor's colleague. "Ah, Sarah," he said, his voice unnaturally cheerful for the late hour. I thought I might find you here. I forced a smile, trying to hide my unease. Dr. Reeves. I didn't expect anyone else to be working. So late, he stepped into the lab, closing the door behind him. The soft click of the latch felt oddly final. "Oh, you know how it is," he said, waving a hand dismissively. "Sometimes the best ideas come at night." I nodded, turning back to my computer screen in the hope he'd take the hint and leave, but instead, I felt him move closer, peering over my shoulder at the data sprawled across my monitor. "What fascinating work you're doing here," he murmured, his breath uncomfortably warm on my neck. "Remind me again, what's the focus of your research?" I shifted in my chair, putting some distance between us. "It's a new approach to data encryption," I explained, keeping my voice neutral, using quantum entanglement to create unbreakable codes. His eyes lit up with an intensity that made my skin crawl. "Unbreakable codes, you say? Now that's interesting, very interesting." Indeed, something in his tone set off alarm bells in my head. Dr. Reeves had always been polite, but distant in our previous interactions. This sudden interest felt wrong, almost predatory. "It's still early stages," I said, minimizing the window on my screen. "Lots of work to do before it's anywhere near practical application." He chuckled, a low sound that raised the hair on the back of my neck. "Oh, I'm sure. But even early-stage research can be valuable to the right people, of course." My heart began to race with, was he implying what I thought he was? I stood up, needing to put more space between us. "Well, it's getting late. I should probably head home." Dr. Reeves didn't move, his eyes, usually hidden behind thick glasses, seemed to bore into me. "Before you go, I'd love to take a closer look at your data. Maybe I could offer some insights." I hesitated, my instinct screaming at me to get out, but he was a respected professor, a colleague of my advisor. Refusing outright could have consequences for my academic career. "I appreciate the offer," I said carefully, "but I don't think that would be appropriate. You know how it is with research integrity." And all that his friendly demeanor slipped for a moment, revealing something harder underneath. "Come now, Sarah, we're all colleagues here. Sharing knowledge is what academia is all about, isn't it?" I took a step back, bumping into the lab bench behind me, of course. "But this is my thesis work. I'm not comfortable sharing the raw data until it's been properly vetted and published." Dr. Reeves' smile didn't reach his eyes. "I understand, but you know, a young researcher like yourself could benefit from additional support, both academic and financial." The implication hung in the air between us. My mouth went dry as I realized the full extent of what was happening. Dr. Reeves wasn't just being nosy or overstepping boundaries. He was trying to steal my research. "I'm doing fine, thank you," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I really need to go." I moved to grab my bag, but he stepped in front of me, blocking my path to the door. "I don't think you understand the opportunity I'm offering you, Sarah. Your work could be revolutionary, but without the right connections, it might never see the light of day. I have those connections. I can make sure your research gets the attention it deserves." My mind raced, trying to find a way out of this situation. I glanced at the emergency exit, but it would trigger an alarm if opened. My phone was in my bag on the other side of Dr. Reeves. "I appreciate your interest," I said, fighting to keep my voice calm, "but I'm not interested in any outside help." My advisor and I have everything under control, his expression. Hardened, your advisor doesn't understand the potential of what you're working on, but there are people who would pay handsomely for a peek at your research. The pretense was gone. Now he was openly admitting to wanting to sell my work. To the highest bidder, I felt a surge of anger cut through my fear. That's not going to happen. I said firmly, no, please let me leave. Dr. Reeves took a step closer, looming over me. I'm afraid I can't do that. Not until we come to an understanding. My heart pounded in my chest. I was trapped between him and the lab bench with no clear way out. But as my hand brushed against the cool surface behind me, an idea formed in one swift motion. I grabbed a beaker of distilled water and threw it in his face. He stumbled back, sputtering and wiping at his eyes. I used the moment of distraction to dart around him, snatching my bag. As I ran for the door, "You'll regret this," he shouted behind me. But I was already in the hallway, running as fast as I could. I didn't stop until I reached my car, my hands shaking as I fumbled with the keys. As I drove away, I could see Dr. Reeves emerge from the building in my rearview mirror, his face contorted with anger. The next few days were a blur of fear and paranoia. I stayed away from the lab, working from home and jumping at every unexpected sound I knew. I had to do something, but the thought of confronting Dr. Reeves or reporting him filled me with dread. What if no one believed me? What if it ruined my academic career? But as the initial shock wore off, anger began to replace fear. This was my research, my hard work. I wasn't going to let someone steal it or intimidate me into giving it up. I set up a meeting with my advisor, Dr. Chun, as I sat in her office, my palms sweating and my heart racing. I told her everything that had happened that night in the lab. To my immense relief, she believed me. More than that, she was furious on my behalf. "This is completely unacceptable," she said, her usually calm demeanor replaced by righteous anger. "We're going to the dean with this immediately." What followed was a whirlwind of meetings, investigations, and uncomfortable confrontations. Dr. Reeves denied everything at first, but faced with the evidence, including security camera footage from the last that night, he eventually confessed. It turned out I wasn't his first victim. Other students and researchers came forward with similar stories of pressure and attempted theft. The scandal rocked the department, leading to Dr. Reeves' dismissal and a complete overhaul of research security protocols. As for me, I threw myself back into my work with renewed determination. The experience had shaken me, but it had also shown me the value of what I was doing. If people were willing to go to such lengths to steal it, then it must be worth protecting and pursuing. Months later, as I stood at the podium presenting my completed thesis, I felt a sense of triumph that went beyond academic achievement. I had faced a threat to my work and my integrity, and I had come out stronger for it. The applause that followed my presentation was sweet, but the real victory was in knowing that the research was mine, earned through hard work and perseverance in the face of adversity. As I left the auditorium, Dr. Tron caught up with me, a proud smile on her face. "Brilliant work, Sarah," she said. "You know, we've received some interesting inquiries about potential applications for your encryption method. Completely above board, of course." I grinned, feeling a mix of excitement and vindication. "That's great news. I can't wait to see where this research goes next." As we walked out into the bright sunlight, I felt a sense of optimism about the future. The path ahead might not always be easy or straightforward, but I knew now that I had the strength to face whatever challenges came my way. The incident with Dr. Reeves had taught me a valuable lesson. In the world of cutting-edge research, knowledge truly is power. And sometimes protecting that knowledge is just as important as discovering it in the first place. The rain was coming down in sheets, turning the highway into a blurry mess of headlights and reflections. I squinted through the windshield, my wipers working overtime, but barely making a dent in the downpour. That's when I saw him, a lone figure on the side of the road, thumb out, looking as drenched and miserable as a stray cat caught in a storm. I don't usually pick up hitchhikers. It's not the safest thing to do these days, but something about the way he stood there, shoulders hunched against. The rain made me slow down before I could talk myself out of it. I was pulling over to the shoulder, the car's tires splashing through. Puddles the man jogged over his face, hidden beneath the hood of a dark jacket as he opened the passenger door. Letting in a gust of wind and rain, I caught a glimpse of a scruffy beard and grateful eyes. "Thanks," he said, his voice gruff but not unfriendly. Didn't think anyone would stop in this weather. I nodded, trying to shake off the nagging feeling that I might be making a mistake. "Where are you headed?" "Just down the roadways," he replied, vaguely settling into the seat. "Wherever you're going is fine." As I pulled back onto the highway, I snuck a glance at my new passenger. He was older than I'd first thought, maybe in his 50s, with deep lines etched into his weathered face. His clothes were worn but clean, and he didn't give off the unsettling vibe I'd expect from someone dangerous. We drove in silence for a few minutes, the only sound the steady drumming of rain on the roof and the swish of the wipers. I was just starting to relax when he spoke again. "So, Mark, how long have you lived in Cedar Grove?" I felt my body tense, my hands gripping the steering wheel a little tighter. I hadn't told him my name, and I certainly hadn't mentioned where I lived. "How did you know that?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He chuckled, a low sound that sent a chill down my spine. "Oh, I know a lot of things about you, Mark. I know you work at the bank on Main Street. I know you have a golden retriever named Max. And I know your wife, Sarah, is probably wondering why you're running late tonight." My mind raced. How could he possibly know all this? I'd never seen this man before in my life. Cedar Grove was a small town, sure, but not so small that everyone knew everyone else's business. "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice shaking, despite my best efforts to stay calm. He turned to face me, and in the dim light from the dashboard, his eyes seemed to gleam with an unnatural intensity. "Just a traveler passing through. But I make it my business to know things about people. It's amazing what you can learn if you just pay attention." I swallowed hard, fighting the urge to slam on the brakes and order him out of the car, but we were in the middle of nowhere, the rain still coming down in torrents, and something told me this man wouldn't leave quietly. If asked, "What do you want?" I asked, hating how small my voice sounded. He smiled a gesture that didn't reach his eyes. "Want? I don't want anything, Mark. I'm just making conversation. Isn't that what people do on long car rides?" I didn't respond, my mind whirling with possibility. Was he some kind of stalker, a criminal who had been watching me, planning some kind of elaborate scheme? "You're wondering how I know so much about you," he said, as if reading my thoughts. "It's simpler than you might think. Your name tag is still on your shirt. You forgot to take it off after work. The dog hair on your pants suggests a large breed, and I saw the golden retriever bumper sticker on your car. As for Sarah, well, you've been checking your phone at every red light. It doesn't take a genius to figure out you're running late and someone's waiting for you." His explanation was logical, but it did little to ease my fear. There was still something off about the whole situation, something that made my skin crawl. "That doesn't explain how you knew where I live," I said, trying to keep my eyes on the road while also watching him in my peripheral vision. He shrugged. "Cedar Grove Bank isn't exactly an L chain. Took an educated guess based on your work shirt." I wanted to believe him, wanted to think this was all just a strange coincidence, a series of lucky guesses, but the knot in my stomach told me otherwise. "Look," I said, spotting a gas station up ahead, "I think this is far enough. I'm going to pull over and you can—" "I wouldn't do that if I were you, Mark," he interrupted, his voice suddenly hard. "We're not done talking yet." I felt a flash of anger cut through my fear. "This is my car. I get to decide when the ride is over." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Oh, Mark, you gave up that control the moment you let me in, but don't worry. I'm not going to hurt you. I just want to talk about what I asked, my mouth dry about choices." he said, leaning back in his seat, about the decisions we make and the consequences that follow. For instance, your decision to embezzle money from the bank. Small amounts in here and there, nothing anyone would notice right away. But it adds up, doesn't it? My blood ran cold. There was no way he could know about that I'd been so careful covering my tracks, making sure the numbers always balanced out. I don't know what you're talking about, I lied, but my voice sounded weak even to my own ears. He turned to look at me, his eyes as boring into mine. Don't insult my intelligence. Mark, we both know the truth. The question is, what are you going to do about it? I gripped the steering wheel so tight, my knuckles turned white. Are you blackmailing me? Is that what this is? He shook his head, looking almost disappointed. Blackmail is such an ugly word. I prefer to think of this as an opportunity, a chance for you to make things right before it's too late. What do you mean? I asked, even though part of me didn't want to know the answer. The bank is conducting an audit next week, he said casually, as if discussing the weather. They're going to find the discrepancies. And when they do, your comfortable life in Cedar Grove will come crashing down, unless he let the word hang in the air between us. I knew I shouldn't ask, shouldn't engage with this stranger who seemed to know far too much about my life and my mistakes. But I couldn't help myself. Unless you turn yourself in, he said. Simply go to your boss first thing tomorrow morning. Confess everything, pay back what you took. It won't be easy, but it'll be a lot better than waiting for them to discover it on their own. I laughed bitterly. And why would I do that? Why should I believe anything you say? He sighed, reaching into his jacket pocket. I tensed, half expecting him to pull out a weapon. Instead, he produced a small leather-bound notebook. Because I have proof, he said, flipping it open: dates, amounts, account numbers. Everything they'll need to convict you. I'm giving you a chance to get ahead of this, Mark. A chance you don't deserve, but one I'm offering nonetheless. My mind reeled. How had he gotten this information? Who was he really? But even as these questions swirled in my head, I knew he was right. The audit would expose everything. And if I didn't act first, I'd lose far more than just my job. Why are you doing this? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Why do you care what happens to me? He was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the rain-slicked road ahead. When he spoke, his voice was softer, almost sad. Let's just say I've been where you are. Mark made the same mistakes. Thought I could outsmart the system. I learned the hard way that there's always a reckoning. I'm trying to save you from that pain. We drove in silence for several minutes, the weight of his words settling over me like a heavy blanket as we approached the outskirts of Cedar Grove. I knew I had a decision to make. There's a diner up ahead. I said, finally, I'll drop you off there. He nodded, seemingly satisfied, as I pulled into the diner's parking lot. He gathered his things, preparing to step back out into the rain. Remember, Mark, he set his hand on the door handle, first thing tomorrow morning. It's your only chance. Before I could respond, he was gone, disappearing into the stormy night as quickly as he had appeared. I sat there for a long time, the engine idling, rain pattering on the roof. Finally, I pulled out my phone and dialed Sarah's number. Hey, I said when she answered, my voice thick with emotion. I'm on my way home, but I need to talk to you about something important when I get there. As I hung up and put the car in drive, I felt a strange mix of dread and relief. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in months, I felt like I was heading in the right direction. The mysterious hitchhiker had given me a second chance. Now it was up to me to make the most of it. The crack of a twig snapping jolted me from my peaceful reverie. I froze, my marshmallow-laden stick hovering over the campfire. The dense forest around me, which had seemed so inviting during the day, now loomed ominously in the yowl. Gathering dusk, I held my breath, straining to hear over the crackling of the fire. There it was again, the unmistakable sound of footsteps, too heavy and deliberate to be an animal. I'd come to these woods alone seeking solitude and a break from the chaos of city life. Now, as fear crept up my spine, I was acutely aware of just how isolated I truly was slowly. I set down my stick and reached for the flashlight beside me. The beam cut through the encroaching darkness, illuminating the dense undergrowth at the edge of my campsite. Shadows danced between the trees, and for a moment I thought I saw a figure duck behind a large oak. "Hello," I called out, hating how my voice quavered as someone their silence answered me, broken only by the gentle rustle of leaves. In the evening breeze, I stood up, my legs shaky beneath me. Maybe I was imagining things, maybe the solitude was getting to me, making me jumpy. But then I saw it, a flash of movement just beyond the circle of my flashlight's beam. My heart leapt into my throat as I caught a glimpse of a dark shape moving through the trees, keeping to the shadows. Fight or flight instinct kicked in, and I chose flight. I doused the fire as quickly as I could, plunging the campsite into darkness. Fumbling in the dim light of my flashlight, I grabbed my backpack and started shoving in whatever I could reach: my water bottle, a bag of trail mix, my map. The sound of footsteps grew closer, no longer trying to be stealthy. Whoever was out there knew I had spotted them. They were coming. I abandoned the rest of my gear and took off into the woods, my flashlight bobbing wildly as I ran. Branches whipped at my face, and roots seemed to reach up to trip me, but fear propelled me forward, deeper into the unfamiliar forest. After what felt like hours, or was probably only minutes, I stopped, gasping for breath. I leaned against a tree, trying to orient myself in my panic. I had run blindly with no thought to direction or landmarks. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. I was lost. I fumbled in my backpack for my map and compass, but in the chaos of my hasty departure, I must have left them behind. My phone was useless out here, with no signal and a rapidly draining battery. A twig snapped nearby, and I stifled a scream. They were still following me. How could they track me so easily in this darkness? I took off again, no longer caring about the noise. I made my pursuer seem to know exactly where I was anyway. My lungs burned, and my legs ached, but terror kept me moving. Suddenly, the ground disappeared from beneath my feet. I tumbled down a steep embankment, leaves and twigs scratching my skin as I rolled. I came to a stop at the bottom. The wind knocked out of me for a moment. I lay there dazed and struggling to breathe. Then I heard the sound of someone carefully making their way down the slope. After me, panic gave me strength. I staggered to my feet, ignoring the pain in my ankle, and limped forward. I found myself in a small clearing, the trees opening up to reveal a sky full of stars. In any other circumstance, it would have been beautiful. My flashlight flickered, the beam growing weaker. I shook it desperately, but it was no use. The light died, leaving me in near total darkness. A branch cracked at the edge of the clearing. I spun around, my eyes straining to see. In the dim starlight, a figure stood there, just a silhouette against the darker backdrop of the forest. "What do you want?" I shouted, my voice raw with fear and exhaustion. The figure took a step forward. "I want you to listen," a deep voice replied. I backed away, my hands held out in front of me. "Stay back. I have a weapon." It was a pathetic bluff, but it was all I had the man for. I could now see it was a man. Stopped. "No, you don't," he said, his tone almost gentle. "You left everything behind at your campsite, including this." He held up something that glinted in the starlight. My hunting knife. My stomach dropped. He had been to my campsite, had gone through my things. How long had he been watching me? "Who are you?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Why are you doing this?" He took another step forward, and I could make out more details. Now he was tall and broad-shouldered, dressed in dark clothing that blended with the night. His face was obscured by a beard and the shadow of a cap. "My name isn't important," he said. "What's important is why you're here, Alice." I felt as if the ground had dropped out from under me. Again, he knew my name. How could he possibly know my name? "How do you know who you are?" he finished for me. "I know a lot about you, Alice. I know you're running from something or someone. My mind raced. Was he a private investigator? Had David hired someone to find me? As if reading my thoughts, the man shook his head. I'm not working for your ex-husband, if that's what you're thinking. I'm here to help you help me. I laughed, the sound bordering on hysterical, by chasing me through the woods in the middle of the night.